Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to welcome you to our webinar today. Thank you very, very much for coming. This is, of course, the same webinar as we had about a week ago, and we are repeating it today for you, so you have a chance to see it once again. So first of all, before I get started, can you just let me know, can you hear me, please? If you can hear me, just type yes into the chat box. Okay, so it seems like quite a few of you can hear me. Also, it would be interesting to know where you are listening from. As you can imagine, I'm here in Kiev today. And where are you today? What is your town? What is your city? Oblast? Where are you listening from? Odessa? Khmelnytsky? Kharkiv? Lviv? Odessa again, and lots and lots of places. Dnipro, Uman, Vyshgorod, Rivne. Okay, very nice. Welcome to everybody once again. And I know you've had a long, long day at school, or maybe some of you are on holidays, but it is very nice to have you with us today. I hope it's not too cold where you are. We had quite a lot of snow here in Kiev yesterday evening, but it's all gone now. Is it snowing in your town? Anybody? Any snow there? No. Okay, no snow anywhere. Okay. So let's get started then. My name is Robert Hartigan, and I'm a senior ELT methodologist here at Pearson Dinternal. I have been living in Kiev I've been living in Ukraine for over 10 years now, so that's quite a long time already. I have a CELTA certificate and a Delta as well, and I also have a master's degree in applied linguistics from the University of Leicester in England. And today, the topic of our discussion will be vocabulary, and in particular vocabulary with our upper secondary school students. Having learned the English language yourselves, I'm sure you well know that vocabulary is exactly what we need to express ourselves. And it is one of the main areas, of course, that we need to focus on with our students. Vocabulary is everywhere. And of course, it's very, very necessary in our big school exams, in our ZNAO. Some of you may be familiar with the ZNAO, of course. And we know that the reading tasks in ZNAO have got quite a bit of difficult vocabulary. And of course, the use of English ZNAO vocabulary task is always one of the most difficult tasks as well the students tackle. And of course, the writing, they need a mixture of structure and of course vocabulary in order to express themselves. Okay, sorry about that. However, it can be difficult for people to remember vocabulary. We all know the challenges that learning vocabulary faces, and how can we try to help people to remember the vocabulary which they learn? First of all, let's have a look at let's have a think together about how our memory works. And because learning words is a difficult process, for example, when we learn vocabulary, we need to think about things like meaning, pronunciation, synonyms, collocations, and so on. And all of these areas make words hard to remember. So first of all, it is important to see how the mind works. So basically, words are arranged into different concepts and ideas, which are very, very general in our mind. And then in our mind, there are different topics. For example, feelings, food, other topics as well. And vocabulary is divided into these areas. And of course, each topic, as you well know, has got its own system of objects, concrete nouns, abstract nouns, verbs, adjectives, phrases, collocations, and so on. And it can be really, really difficult for students to remember all of those. So for example, if we look at these two topics here, some students may well know these phrases, these words, both in English and in Ukrainian. For example, here on the left, they might well know the phrase bayatisia, which means to be afraid of. I hope you like my pronunciation there, by the way. And also the word apelsine, orange. So students might well know those words in English and in Ukrainian. However, a word like this, they might know it in Ukrainian as baklajan. Some students might be familiar in some way with this English translation of aubergine. Some students might not know that as well. And there's also another word, the American version, which is eggplant. And like that's another word again, and some students might see that word somewhere and they might not recognize that it is also aubergine, which is baklajan. So there's these areas of uncertainty, these gaps in their minds as well. And one more example is, for example, this feeling here, which is in quite a lot of course books. The phrase is to be frustrated with something, which is a phrase we have all taught, I'm sure, and students eventually do understand it quite well in English and they can use it in English. However, if we asked students to translate that phrase into Ukrainian, a lot of them actually find difficulty in finding one particular translation. So this is just 4 words which we have looked at here, and some of the words can be very easily stored and very easily remembered. However, there are some problems and some gaps and some uncertainties, and if these are only 4 words, imagine what this network looks like for lots and lots, hundreds more vocabulary items and lots of more topics. So the mind is very complicated indeed. So let's think about, keeping this in mind, let's think about how we can imagine a vocabulary learning path to look like for our students. Well, most of the words and phrases that we learn become parts of a student's receptive knowledge first. This means, of course, that the students can recognize the words when they see them or hear them, and it explains why students have a larger receptive knowledge than productive knowledge. Of course, our aim as teachers, as you know, is to first of all let words become part of receptive knowledge and then have them become part of our productive knowledge. Yes, as Oksana there says, the productive knowledge is the aim which we want our students to be able to achieve. So how do we get there? What we're going to look at now is 6 different steps to helping our students remember vocabulary, from bringing their vocabulary knowledge from their receptive knowledge up to their productive knowledge. So let's think back on our network of vocabulary in the mind, and we want to think about teaching a level of students at the level of B1. Okay, and the first step is to have a topic, and the topic, imagine for example, the topic is going to be on appearance and personality. So remembering the problem that students have with all random items of vocabulary stored, in order to get them ready, we need to give our students an opportunity to show what they know. So for example, what do they already know about the topic of appearance and personality? So of course we could begin the lesson with a brainstorming activity. For example, our students in pairs or small groups brainstorm all of the words they know connected with the topic of appearance and personality, and give them a time limit for that, 1 minute. And the time limit, of course, keeps them focused, keeps them on task. When time is up ask some students for their words, and the teacher writes them on the board, on the blackboard, on the whiteboard. And of course, this is very important to do because the students need to see how the words are spelled. It can help the weaker students make a note of those words which they don't know. And of course, the stronger students should be able to show their knowledge, so it gives them a good chance here as well. Another opportunity to give the students, to let the students show what they know, is to allow them to categorize. It's a slightly more guided form of brainstorming. Here, as you can see, the students write down the words they know, but they put them into different categories. So it guides them a little bit more. As we said before, there should be a time limit for this, 1 minute again, to keep them focused. And yeah, so some of you are saying that they should be interested in what they're talking about and they should like doing kinds of brainstorming. The time limit can perhaps add some sort of competitive element to it, and that can make it maybe more interesting for them. And another alternative is to show students some pictures of some famous people, or get them to think of some famous people by themselves and let them describe them using the words from the categories. Or, alternatively, you can personalize this stage. Simply ask students to describe people in their class, and they can do that in pairs. And to do this, they will be using the vocabulary which they already know about the topic. So, what we have looked at here, in order for students to show what they already know about the topic, is to get them to brainstorm, or categorize, or personalize the vocabulary at this stage. Let me show you some ways that this can be done using the Pearson Upper Secondary School coursebook called Focus. Focus is really, really good for its structured approach to teaching, and especially good for the way it presents and practices vocabulary. So let's say then we're on the unit of personality and appearance, as we said, and this is the first page, the first 2 pages of the unit. The unit begins with vocabulary. And the reason for this, of course, is that the vocabulary can be used and recycled throughout the whole unit, as we can see, as we will see a bit later on. So here then, the students have an opportunity to show what they already know, and this comes at the very, very beginning of the lesson. And you remember our 3 ways, our 3 types of tasks to get them to show what they already know: brainstorming, categorizing, and personalizing. What we're going to do now, I am going to highlight some parts of the instructions, okay? And your task is to say if the instructions show brainstorming, categorizing, or personalizing. Into the chat box, write 1 for brainstorm, 2 for categorize, and 3 for personalize. Okay, so are you ready? Right. The first instruction I will highlight is this one. In pairs, put the words in the box under an appropriate heading. Is that number 1, number 2, or number 3? Number 2, lots of number 2s. Oh, very good. Let's see if you're correct. Yes, categorizing. Categorizing is putting them under a different heading. Okay, putting them into categories. Okay, next instruction. Okay, ready? This time, add more words to each list. What about that? Number 1, number 2, or number 3? Add more words to each list. So they're thinking of as many words as they can, and they add them to the list. Thinking of as many as they can is brainstorming. Very good. Lots of number 1s there. Brainstorm. Finally, which words can you use to describe your partner? Is that brainstorming, categorizing, or personalizing? Lots of number 3s. Lots of number 3s. Check. Yes, correct. Good. And as some of you said earlier there in the chat, which I saw, by personalizing the vocabulary, it makes it mean more to the students. And that is a very, very good point. Okay, so here we are on our roadmap for learning vocabulary, and that is our first step. Give the students an opportunity to show the vocabulary they already know connected to the topic. So then these words have been reactivated in their minds, and then this means that the students are now ready to add more words and more phrases to this topic in their head. Okay, and the next thing we need to do then as teachers is to make students notice that there are some gaps in their knowledge. And so how can we do this? For example, when the students were describing their partner earlier, they might have realized that they need the word Juliet. Yes, that's the Ukrainian word, I believe. But they might not know it in English, and they're thinking, so they know that there is a need for this word. Some of you are saying vest. Vest is an American English word, correct. In British English, we call it a waistcoat. So a waistcoat or a vest. So this creates this need for new vocabulary. Or if students are reading a text, for example, there might be some words highlighted in a different color, which students can recognize as being important to the general topic of the lesson. And once again, they notice that there are gaps in their vocabulary knowledge. So they are ready to receive this new information. As teachers, we can quickly translate the words into Ukrainian so the students understand them, which will save time perhaps, but the topic of our discussion and what we are interested in is ways of making sure that the students can remember the words. As Martha says here, it's better to explain, which is good because it's more involving. However, what we can also do is maybe give some of the control to our students, give them the opportunity to work it out for themselves. And the teacher can be there to help and to check how they are doing. Ira talks about the importance of context, and I agree very, very much, and we will see what we mean by that very soon. The third step then is to guess and understand, to allow students the opportunity to guess the meanings of words and understand what they mean. So for example, Ira was talking about a context. An example context for such vocabulary is Facebook profile photos. So a lot of you, I'm sure, are active on Facebook. A lot of your students are as well, or some sort of social network. They all have their profile photos, but what exactly? So the profile photograph which you choose on Facebook, it means something. It can tell something about you. For example, if one of you has a photograph like this, which shows how beautiful you are, it can mean that you are a mischievous person or a gorgeous person. So that's a compliment there. Or if a person has a photograph of themselves as a baby, what do you think that would say about their personality? It would say that they are nice. It would say that they are cute. Yes, Anna? Okay, there's another one for cute, nice. It says, okay. It can perhaps say that they are a bit immature. Oh, Ira says nostalgic about their childhood. So it can say that they're immature. Okay, you may of course agree or disagree, but all of this has been researched and it is reported in various findings. Let's have a look at how that is presented in the coursebook focus. So this is the text. We have just seen the title here, Facebook profile photos and what they mean. We have looked at the pretty portrait and the you as a baby down here, and we saw some of the vocabulary appear there, and here it appears once again in the text. The second step then is for students to notice that there are gaps in their knowledge. And the third step is to allow students to try to guess and understand from the context what they mean. Then, of course, once we've done that, we need to allow students the opportunity to recognize the new words among others. Okay, so give students a chance to make decisions about words, maybe to write the word, to recognize it, put it under the correct category, and so on. Some tasks, which I do for this meaningful recognition, are quite simple and quite short. Let me show you some of them. The first one is called a minimal response. Once again, we have our different categories this time: formal clothes, casual clothes, shoes, and accessories. Now, as well in this lesson, the students have been working with clothes vocabulary as well, okay? So, we can show our students a word, or a picture if you wish, or a word, and they have to put it under the correct category. So, a fleece. Is it formal clothes, casual clothes, shoes, or accessories? A fleece is indeed number 2. Olena was first, correct, yes. A fleece is a type of casual jacket. So a lot of you have got that. Okay, very good. Bangles, are they formal clothes, casual, shoes, or accessories? Antonina there says number 4, and she is correct. Bangles in your hand, I think. And a waistcoat, oh, we had this word earlier, vest or waistcoat, and that is number, a waistcoat is number 1. Yes, formal clothes, very formal. And so we get the idea. They have clothes and they put them under the correct category. Next, of course, is to get students to match the target vocabulary to other synonyms which they know. And this is it's really important to do this, as we will see, because all the time in upper secondary school exams, of course, in NAO, students are expected to know different synonyms for words because they can appear, one word can appear in the text and its synonym can appear in the question. Here, for example, this is part of our text. I think you can see those words in red. I think you can see those. I will show you a synonym, and you have to, well, if you can, very, very quickly, say what its synonym is in the text. So, for example, the word creative is a synonym to gorgeous, no. Mischievous, no. Imaginative, yes. Good. And another one, cool, is a synonym to gorgeous, mischievous, imaginative, stylish. I think Marina was in there first, correct. Cheeky is another one, and that is a synonym to the word trendy, yeah, but from the text, mischievous. Cheeky and mischievous are synonyms. And as we said, a good knowledge of synonyms can help students, especially for the reading part of NAO. Okay, definitions can be very, very useful as well if there are words which have a similar meaning in English, which students often confuse. For example, these words, anytime I teach clothes vocabulary, students always have problems with these words. Clothes fit you, match you, or suit you. But what's the difference? For example, if clothes are the right size for you, do they fit you, match you, or suit you? They fit you, yes. Fit is about size. It's too big, it's too small. Okay. Next definition. If clothes are the right color, the right shape, or the right style for you, then they suit you. Suit you is how the clothes go with you, with your style, with you as a person. Then, if clothes go well with your hair, eyes, or other clothes, they match you. So they match an aspect of you. They match other clothes, they match you. Okay, so what we've looked at as ways of getting students to recognize the words is these 3 types of tasks: minimal response, synonyms, and definitions. Let's just show you very quickly where I got those tasks from. I got them from the course book Focus, and I looked, this is the course book here, I looked at the back of the course book, and there is this word store, okay, which is at the very, very back. And the word store is a place where students can do tasks just like these that you have seen, and that then functions as a store which they can refer to again and again to remember the vocabulary from the whole book. Okay? So, for example, these are some of those tasks. Up here on top, we did this minimal response. We put words under different categories. Here, we matched words with definitions. Okay, that's where I took that part from. And we had our synonyms. We had creative and imaginative, cheeky and mischievous. I took those exactly from here. And so that gives our students an opportunity to recognize the words. Right, so these are our 4 stages so far. We're getting closer to our productive knowledge of the words. The next would be for our students to use the vocabulary. However, they're not exactly ready to use it completely freely yet. They still need support. So we get them to use with support. Where do they get the support from? Well, the students get the support from the book that they're using. For example, we could ask students to talk about what types of clothes they would wear in these different situations. If they went to a party, what types of clothes would they wear? If they went on holidays, what types of words? To a concert, or if they went on a type of a trekking holiday, what would they wear? Or asking and answering questions. For example, do you try to buy clothes that match the color of your eyes or your hair? Student A asks student B, and student B has to try to think, of course, of the meaning of match, and she tries to give an appropriate answer. And then maybe student B asks a question, how long does it take you to get dressed for a party? And again, the vocabulary from the lesson is being activated by the students discussing during this part of the lesson. And so on. Also, our students have got plenty of photographs in their telephones. We could ask them to look at their phones and talk about people who they know, get them to describe them, talk about their personality, and so on. So, we get our students to use this vocabulary with support, and the support, as we said, comes from the book itself. These are the 2 pages we have been working with. So first of all, we get our students to show what they know, then we ask them to notice the new vocabulary, and we try to help them understand the meaning of the new words. And we looked at the word store at the back where they do these meaningful recognition tasks. And then, in this part of the student's book, this is where the students get opportunities to write words and to speak together using the vocabulary. And of course, if the students, of course, cannot think of a word, they can look at their book. And they can look at the word in the book and then they can produce it. But at this stage, they do need the support of the course book to help them during their speaking tasks. And they get the support from this page of the book and from the word store. So we're on number 5 and just one more to go and we're nearly finished. The next stage, number 6, is to, what do you think? So number 5 was use the vocabulary with support. Number 6 will be to use the vocabulary, Hannah, without support. Very good, yes. So, and using the vocabulary without support can take place perhaps not necessarily in the same lesson, but this can take place the whole way during the rest of the unit. For example, the next page, as you can see here, is a grammar lesson, but how does it start? Imagine you're going to a weekend music festival in summer. Discuss what you would wear. So although this is a different lesson, there is still an opportunity to recycle the vocabulary from the previous lesson. Or moving further into the unit, a listening lesson. Here they get an opportunity to discuss the qualities and characteristics of a good friend. And that brings back our personality adjectives. Further on, during this reading task, there is a reading text about this family here, all about them, and then after they read, in pairs, describe 3 people from your family. Who do you look like most? So they can talk about appearance, they can bring clothes into that, and of course, they can bring vocabulary into that as well, their personality vocabulary into that as well, and so on. Here we are, even later on in the unit again. This is the speaking page, the speaking section. You can see perhaps these ladies and these people here are in a shop, and there are dialogues. One lady was talking about using dialogues, and then there will definitely be the opportunity to talk about clothes that fit you, that match you, that suit you. So these are our 6 steps to remembering vocabulary. Okay, so show what you know. Always give students an opportunity to show what they know first. Then that gets them ready, that prepares them to notice and to be presented with or to work out the meaning of new vocabulary. We want them to use words with support, but before that we need to give them an opportunity to try to recognize the new vocabulary among others. And all of the time we're aiming to get our students to use the vocabulary without support. So the material for today's webinar was taken from the course book called Focus. It is here in 5 levels. Usually it goes from level 1 up to level 4. Level 4, for example, maybe in the 11th form of maybe specialized schools. Non-specialized schools could work with, for example, level 3 up in the 11th form. And it is generally intended, as we see here, for students from the 7th to 11th forms. And there is a lot of, it is very, very good for ZenAO. I think for vocabulary is just one of the reasons why I think Focus is a really good and useful book for preparing students for this exam. These are our websites. I'm sure you have looked at our website to register for this webinar, and Anastasia here is asking about if it helps for IELTS or indeed other international exams. Well, I would say it does, because in order to do an exam at a certain level, you need to make sure that you have that level of English first. So if the student wants to do an exam, you need to get them up to the appropriate level first, and the vocabulary, the grammar, the structure of Focus, I think, helps that. You probably have been here on our website, eltdinternal.com.ua. I hope you've had a chance to look around at some of these options here. I like these sections, Podgotovka, there's NAO, there's lots and lots more there for you. There's other resources here, Dla Wchitelya. And these are the 2 webinars, the one webinar, sorry, which we have had so far. We had the first session in October, the middle of October, and we had it again for you today. That is not all though. If you liked the webinar, perhaps you might be interested in another one. And these are the other topics which we have in November and December. The next webinar is called Learnt and Not Forgotten. Learnt and Not Forgotten. 3 rules for an exam revision lesson. So again, we're thinking about exams becoming more and more important all the time here in Ukraine. You can probably see here on the slide, the date is the 8th of November at 4 p.m. and that will be repeated again later on in November. Thank you very, very much for attending. And before you go, I saw some of you have been asking throughout about the certificates. There will be certificates for this webinar. In a day or 2, you will get an email from us which will have your certificate in it. And into that, you will be able to type your name in English or in Ukrainian as you wish, and then you'll be able to print it off should you wish as well. Okay, so yeah, certificates are important, I agree. Thank you once again very, very much for coming. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them. Otherwise, we will see you here again in a week or 2, in about 2 weeks. Okay, thank you very, very much. Have a nice evening. Goodbye. Thank you. Yep, see you in 2 weeks, Ludmila. Thank you, Miroslav and Ludmila. Am I English or American? I'm actually, you're close. I'm actually from Ireland, in between the two. So we get the best of both worlds. Irina, where are you from? Well, Oksana, how much time should I spend on vocabulary on each lesson? Obviously, it's up to the teacher, but the advantage of having a good vocabulary lesson or two at the beginning of the unit will mean that throughout the rest of the unit, there will be plenty of opportunities for students to recycle and reuse these words. It's actually having, you've said that one lesson, one whole lesson is a long time, but investing that time in the vocabulary will be worth it in the end because students will have an opportunity to remember the words and they'll be able to reuse them. Actually, Anna, we've got 40 types of green, 40. Natalia, university students, it depends. If it's general English, there's a course book which I really, really like called Speak Out. It's available at different levels as well. It is so varied. It has got a combination of videos, podcasts, really good and natural listenings, and of course, integrated skills and language systems. And all of the time, the aim is to get students to speak using the new structures, using the new vocabulary, using the new grammar. Valeri, I will have to get back to you about that, okay? Yeah, Oksana, often like in Focus, for example, the vocabulary is an integrated part of the unit. The unit starts with the vocabulary. It is all there in the first page of the book for you, in the first page of the unit for you. And so it is all, there's not really that much that you need to actually create for yourself because it is there. And then as we saw, it can be repeated, recycled throughout, but it is worth spending a good lesson or two on vocabulary, if you have the time, of course, if, you know. Yuri, Abukiv is a beautiful city. I love it. I want to go there again. What about Vishkarad? What about Vishkarad, Julia? And where is Svyatova, Svetlana? Which oblast? I will definitely go to Odessa for sure. I've been there before. Oh, Lugansk region. Interesting. How many lessons should be referred to a certain unit of in terms of vocabulary, asks Julia. That's a really good question. So, from my experience of using focus, I like it because there is one, ideally, you get one page per lesson is what I really like about it. So like one page for grammar, one page for listening, and so on. The vocabulary, 2 pages, is at the beginning of the unit. In order, the vocabulary is often introduced through this context. The context often involves reading or listening. And that could take a lesson, okay? Plus, of course, to give your students homework. But in order to make sure your students have plenty of practice and are familiar with the vocabulary for the rest of the unit, I would recommend that they spend another lesson on this word store part and on this part of the right-hand page of the book as well. So 1 or 2 lessons, good vocabulary lessons at the beginning of the unit. Then as the unit goes on, you will have opportunities to recycle and add more new vocabulary to that which you learned at the beginning of the unit. It comes in like various parts of other pages. Oh, that's a pleasure, Oksana. Thank you very much. Say hello to your children, Oksana. Focus or exam activator? That's it's a good question. Exam activator is specifically written for exams in general, and it is assumed that students already have the level of grammar required and that they really need to do exam type tasks. Focus caters for both worlds, I think. It includes a good grammar program, explanations, plenty of grammar exercises and vocabulary as we saw, as well as exam type tasks. So they're slightly different courses and you're very welcome to have a look and make up your own mind about that too. Oh, Diaki Ujana. I can have a cup of tea after this, I think. No problem, Yulia. Thank you for coming. Natalia, business English vocabulary. I would definitely recommend the course Market Leader. Okay, that's definitely a full course for sure, which I would recommend having a look at. And as well as that, Pearson Longrun has a good range of business English dictionaries too, which would be very, very helpful. So Tatiana is asking about CLIL. Can you be a bit more specific? CLIL is often included naturally in course books nowadays. Yeah, it's integrated into our courses. It's often in the unit itself or it's in between units. And it covers different topics like history, geography, arts, science. So most of the CLIL is already there. I'm glad you find the Market Leader Flexi Edition useful, Olena. ESP books for biologists. Oh, that's a difficult question, Julia. I would have to look online for that. But from the top of my head, I'm not really sure. Yes, there are such books for people in IT, actually, which we have here, aimed at more adults or students in colleges, perhaps. And there are a series of English for, and there's English for Information Technology, which is available in 2 levels, A2 and A2B1, so elementary and pre-intermediate. Olga. So, okay then, thanks to everybody for attending today. Really, really enjoyed the session and your questions afterwards. It was very, very useful, I hope, and it was very, very nice to see you again, or to see you again online. And I hope we will see each other soon. And so take care, and I wish you a lovely evening and upcoming weekend, of course. Okay, thank you. So, goodbye. Goodbye.